Welcome to the Bookology Podcast. I'm your co-host, Jonathan Jones, here with the bookologist and world's only worthologist, Dr. Fred Jones. How we doing, Dad?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here and to have another episode going.
Most definitely another episode, another opportunity to add value to the listeners. And I think this is a very timely episode just in regards to knowing that creating a book all starts from the basis of a foundation, which looks like an outline. So, Dad, today I want to just talk with you a little bit about how to write an effective outline and making that the basis of your book. So, where would we start there? Just from square one, what does that look like?
Well, I'm going to back up just a little bit and tell you what's going to happen if you don't have an outline. Here are the problems that people face when they don't have an outline. They're going to be stuck. Their writing is going to be all over the place. They going to have good ideas, but they're not going to be organized or like a bunch of geese. They're not going to be flying in formation. So if for somebody is having trouble finishing their book, one of the problems is they probably don't have an outline.
Okay, so that if they don't have an outline, so you're saying this causes you to struggle. This causes you to even waste time in a sense by not having outline. So what would you say is one of the benefits of having, or a few benefits of having an outline? Talk a little bit about that, Dad, so the people are aware.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of reasons why you should have an outline. Number one, it's going to make the writing process easier. When you got an outline, it's like plug and play. The writing process is going to be easier. It's going to also make it easier for the reader to read your material. Okay? Have you ever tried to talk to somebody and they talking A, X, Y, Z, and they're all over the place? There's no flow there. And that's going to be a problem. So one thing is going to make the writing for the writer easier, and they're going to make reading for the reader easier.
Okay, so easier for the writer to continue to write, for their thoughts to flow, and easier for the reader to follow those thoughts, just in that flow and just as things move along. Okay, definitely makes a lot of sense. So would you say that you've always had outlines for all of your books, all of the books that you've published for yourself, and all of the books that you've written?
Now, you would ask that question, wouldn't you? You'd ask me that question, right? You know I haven't always had an outline. Actually, John, I was working with Dr. Rosa Boone. Dr. Boone has been a writer since for many years. She's a headed up writing programs for a lot of major universities. And so I was working with Dr. Boone, and she was helping me. And she said, you got to start with an outline. You got to start with the outline. She hammered that concept of starting with an outline. And since that time, I've been writing with outlines, and it makes it a whole lot more effective, easier, and it's much better.
Yeah, it's one of the,
So,
it's
no,
one of those. Oh, go ahead.
you go ahead.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it falls in to that bracket, or in that family of structure. We don't always like structure, but structure helps a lot of things flow so much better. Writing, reading, life with structure makes it all better. So with that being said, Dad, let's go ahead and get into the content, so the authors of abundance who are listening, they can go ahead and take these steps, they can take these tools and apply it to their own stories and to their own books. So, Dad, I'm gonna let you go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, well, you were talking about how to outline and why you should outline. I want to give you another reason for building an outline is just what you just said. You get better structure for your story, and when your story is better structured, you're going to have better retention, recall, and recitation. Other words, have you ever heard a sermon that someone preached that was just so good, and they had A, B, C, or one, two, three? Have you ever heard one of those type sermons?
Oh, yes, sir, most definitely.
And as a result, you can repeat it. Am I correct?
It does make it easier to regurgitate and to share that information with others. It does make it that easier. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, that's another benefit of outlining. That's another benefit of outline. Also, when you outline, it makes for limited errors and omissions. When you outline the story, you put in all the components, and the outline triggers your thoughts so that you'll go back and remember what you wanted to put in, and so that you don't leave things out. Okay, so that's important too. Uh, so outlining is kind of like laying out the pieces to a puzzle, or is laying out the blueprint to a roadmap. It's a guide. It's like a tour guide. It's going to give you flow and structure for your message. Flow and structure for your message. And so that is another reason why writers should outline their books. Okay. And another big takeaway is to make sure you cover all your points. What that'll do is you're going to have a more thorough script for your story, a more thorough script for your manuscript. So, for all the writers out there, my suggestion is start out with the end in mind. Okay. And then people say, how many words should I put in my book, or how long should my book be? Well, as long as it needs to be to get your point across, and as fewer words as necessary to get your point across. Other words, there's no formula for how many words you should have in a book, how long or short it should be. But what you want to think about is getting your message across, and that can be done through outlining. And when you outline, you lay out the big picture of your manuscript, and then you just come in and plug and play.
Plug and play. I definitely like plug and play. That makes the process a lot smoother. Because when I think of plug and play, I just think back of being in elementary school, middle school, those areas where you have a question, and it has the line for you to fill in the blank. And what I hear you saying is that it's like us filling in the blank, because we write out the outline, so then we can go back and put the extra details, the extra sauce, the extra words to further expound upon the points that we initially started with. So I think that's great. So you said start with the end in mind. Okay, I think that's a great place to start. And then what comes after that next day? You said start with the end in mind, and then what would follow up with that?
Well, then you want to begin to look at the flow of your story. Decide how you want to tell your story. Now, a lot of times there are many ways you can tell your story. You can tell it based on the timeline, or you can make it a sequential story, or you can start from the very end of your story and then come back to the front of the story and go forward. So there are a lot of different ways that you can share your story. You don't have to start from the beginning chronologically to the end. It actually is probably going to be more exciting if you mixed it up. Okay. But the key is look for the level of continuity or the way you want to tell your story. So the first thing is, what do you want the reader to walk away with? What is the big promise of your book? And whatever that big promise or that big title is, then allow your outline to answer that promise.
Hmm. That's good. That's good. That's like a checklist to make sure I crossed my T's, I dotted my I's. Okay, that's good information. That's good information. Dad, keep it going. Keep it going. This is getting good.
Well, I mean, yeah, well, the idea is you want your book to have continuity and flow. You don't want it to be all over the place. And you want the book to have a balance to it, okay? Now you say, what do you mean balance? Well, if in chapter 1 you got a quote, then you got a title, then maybe you might have a scripture, and then you start into your story. And if chapter 1 is, let's just say 500 words, and then chapter 2 is 50 words, and chapter 3 is 700 words, that's not balanced. If you want your book to be symmetrical and balanced with better style, feel, and so forth, then you're going to want to have the quote, the scripture, the title, and then 500 words, chapter 1. Quote, scripture, and title, about 500 words, chapter 2. Other words, you want that same thing. You want the same thing to be on each chapter, and that will give your book some style. Now, what that will do is motivate the reader. The reader will be motivated to keep moving when they see that you got a cadence to your book, or you got a rhythm to your writing. It lets the reader get into it and keep moving forward with your book. All of this starts with that outline, okay? Now, and when you outline, it's going to also make it practical for the writing process to keep moving. Now, notice something that I've been saying the whole time we've been talking. I've been talking about flow. I've been talking about continuity. I've been talking about moving. I've been talking about getting the book done. Why? Because so many writers get stuck. And when I say get stuck, they don't finish their book. And the number one reason why writers don't finish is because they don't have an outline.
Wow. Yeah. So I was actually talking with my wife the other day because we're reading a book for our grow group, our couples group. And one thing that we realized when we first started reading the book was we opened up the book, read the first chapter, and then we're like, oh, okay. Because going back to your point about balance, we said, oh, okay, this book is, the chapters are fairly short. So now this motivated us, just like you were saying. So now we know every time we go to pick up that book, we know if chapter one was moderately short, then chapter two, we looked at it moderately short. So then it motivated us to want to go back and pick the book up some more because we knew what we were getting. There wasn't any questions or trying to figure out what the book looks like. So that balance is big, just speaking from a reader's perspective personally. And I think that is a great point that you shared, Dad. So good information. Good
Well,
information.
well, well, we'll close out on this one. When you organize your writing and you outline your writing, you're going to get just what you just described, and that is an engaged reader. You were engaged, and as a result of your engagement, you kept turning the pages, or you kept coming back to the book. You have a desire to come back to that book, to keep reading and to keep turning the pages, because it was outlined, it was symmetrical, it was balanced, it had style, and it answered whatever the big promise on the title of it was. So you get an engaged reader. So those are some of the points and reasons why every writer should start by organizing their speech, their sermon, their manuscript, their ebook, whatever you're writing. Start with outlining.
There it is. Start with outlining. And then if you're listening to this podcast and you're saying, well, okay, I understand I start with outlining because Dr. Fred told me so, but I would love to work with Dr. Fred and his team personally, one on one, and even find out more information about what type of programs they have, or seeing how they can serve and support me. We'd encourage you to go to drfredjones.com/strategy. And that's the letter D, the letter R, and then fredjones.com/strategy. And take the time and apply there for your complimentary strategy session, and have opportunity to talk with Dr. Fred or one of his coaches. And then from there, find out more information and see how we best can serve and support you. So, Dad, without further ado, go ahead and just share your favorite quote, and then we will let the authors of abundance go until next week.
The most expensive thing you will ever pay is attention to the wrong people.
There it is. All right, authors of abundance, thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to getting with you all next week.